just to kick off the interview, a question about the new legislation coming out of the European Union in MiCA. Big picture, what do you see in that legislation in terms of the impact that it poses on the future of digital assets and cryptocurrency?
Thank you, Julian, for having me. Yeah, I think it's the first big statement the European Commission and the European Union Parliament has with MiCA is that this industry deserves regulation. For quite a long time, we were like operating in a space where, yeah, there was a lot of gray area. Nobody knew, there was no specific regulation. Nobody knew if something is allowed and in which member state this is allowed or not. And I think it is worth to note that the European Commission started quite early to think about this regulatory approach in comparison to a lot of other jurisdictions where you still now don't find like such a comprehensive approach. That's the first thing, and I think the second really worth mentioning thing is that the European MiCA regulation completely differentiates between securities and crypto assets. So it's a crypto assets regulation. It's not dealing with securities, and that is really very important because for quite a long time we were fighting over the question if and what is as a security and which regulations should be applicable, right? The answer now from Europe is that we have a specific set of regulation for crypto assets and a specific, like we have some specific service providers which are regulated and which have to get licensed first, right? That is the second big thing. And I think the third big thing, and that is what we were always asking for, is that you have like now a 400 million plus market, the European single market, directly approachable via one license. So you get a license in one member state, and you can actually passport your products and services throughout the European Union, through EEA, European Economic Area, and that's actually huge because, like, whatever we did, be it Switzerland, Liechtenstein, whatever you like, which jurisdiction you might think of, right? In the end, it was always like a local approach. And now you have, for the first time ever, one big regulatory regime, a same level playing field in a 400 million plus market.
That's great. And so, first looking at the question of cohesion, how big of a deal is it that you have this cohesion, this regulatory cohesion in such a large market? And to what extent do you see what's happening in the EU as maybe being a precursor to potentially some broader global cohesion in the regulatory community?
I mean, what you see is, and you cannot underestimate the importance of that. You have to imagine if you want to, for example, operate a cryptocurrency exchange, right? A very simple example. And no, it doesn't matter where you are or where you locate your company. In the end, you always have the same challenge. You have to operate under this reverse solicitation regime where you actually, yes, you market your products only in your home market. And then if somebody finds you, it's kind of okay-ish, but still that depends on the jurisdiction where then your customer is coming from. It's extremely limiting your business, right? And it also has there's a lot of risks involved, regulatory uncertainty. And it's just from an entrepreneurial point of view, it's challenging to operate and scale up a business, right? Because you cannot actively advertise for your products and services. And so that's really huge. That's really one of the key things which we have to address. And what is happening now is you saw like the smaller jurisdictions like Liechtenstein, which had a very comprehensive piece of legislation with their blockchain act, with service providers, and these like smaller jurisdictions attracted a lot of these companies, right? And then what happened is, as soon as jurisdictions like Germany, which are bigger, open up a little bit, right, into that direction, attracted these companies because they said, okay, at least we have a bigger home market, right? Mm-hmm. So we have a point to start with. But what is now happening with the same level playing field, you choose your jurisdiction not based on the regulation you have or the home market, because in the end, everywhere the same regulatory regime is applicable, and the home market is the European Union, European Economic Area. So this same level playing field will then for sure always, in the end, might trigger some different reasons why you choose your jurisdiction. Be it your local regulator, for example, you have to deal with the experience they have with crypto assets. Because, I mean, even if you have the MiCA regulation applicable in all of the member states at the same moment in time, not all of the regulators are already prepared, right? Like they don't have, like that's what we see, right? That really depends on the regulator, how much experience they already have, how knowledgeable they are. Some of them really have to start to build up knowledge, because in the past, their member state, their jurisdiction actually had a full like non-allowance policy, for example, for all of these crypto assets services. And now this changes, right? And I think that is really huge. And so what we will see is that's my personal view is that, and that's what we already feel a little bit, is that people, or like these entrepreneurs, they're choosing their jurisdiction based on different factors now.
So that's really interesting too, in the context of at the start of the sort of transfusion of cryptocurrency throughout the European market, it felt as though that there were certain countries like Spain and Portugal that were really coming to dominate in terms of where cryptocurrency seemed to be flourishing. I'm wondering, in terms of this kind of traditional notion of what cryptocurrencies, at least according to some, were supposed to be, which is a kind of substitute for fiat currency, to what extent do you think MiCA works for or against that vision of cryptocurrency?
If you look at when MiCA, the first draft, was published in September 2020, and if you look what have happened before, MiCA is also a clear answer to this stablecoin project of this like social media platform everybody knows.
Right.
And that was pretty clear, right? That was, okay, we have to provide for a regulatory environment where, and that actually, that's true, right? It was an answer to that, but the answer was not, it's completely forbidden. You're not allowed to do that in Europe. That was not the answer. The answer was, yes, we have requirements and they're challenging. They're really like, it's a very, very comprehensive regulatory regime for stablecoins, but you're allowed to operate a stablecoin out of Europe, right? You just have to follow the requirements. And that was pretty clear that was the answer for that. So, and I think what MiCA is all about, it's about crypto assets. It's not only about cryptocurrencies, right? So the stablecoin part, even if it was one of the big reasons why the European Commission then really started to provide this draft very fast in comparison, was the stablecoin project. In the end, you know, that was not the only case. You see that it's the definition of crypto assets is way broader than just cryptocurrencies. And I think that is the right approach, and this will also allow you for other projects than only cryptocurrencies. The cryptocurrency part of it is for sure huge, as you said, and in the end, yeah, there are a lot of political questions involved, if that makes sense or not. To your initial point about Portugal and Spain, I mean, for example, I was quite a lot of times, and I don't know where you're from, but in Portugal, a lot of people actually started to operate their business out of Portugal because of tax reasons, or they moved to Portugal because of tax reasons. But the same, I mean, that was what I was told is that they thought that crypto is not taxed in Portugal. If you look closely, that is actually not true. There is no like tax law which tells you we don't tax crypto at all and never will, right? It's just based on a decision for one individual which asked the authority, as far as I am informed, right? And you see that in a lot of jurisdictions, right? That this uncertainty, that people don't have like clear guidance, is there. And there's another thing which is quite interesting. You have these movements. So, for example, when Malta started with their regulatory regime, everybody was running to Malta, right? And then they were overwhelmed. There were like a lot of the regulator had challenges with dealing all of these requests, right? And this industry is so decentralized, and they, in most cases, really don't care where they are, where their footprint is. And now you again have a regulatory approach with MiCA, which regulates an intermediary with an address, with C-level, with board, with like responsible persons they want to like talk to, right? So again, you see that it's very interesting to see the effect of such a regulation on the good side of things. It's actually positive that you know what you have to do to being able to provide your products and services in Europe. But on the other hand, if you're a decentralized team organized in a very decentralized way without a company, like you operate in a DAO, for example, yes, you don't find all the answers you actually wanted to have answers for, but I think it's a good start, and we don't have to forget about that. MiCA will not like stay in the form as it is for now forever. I'm pretty sure that that's not the case, but it's a good starting point, right?
And so, in terms of this point about people really trying to figure out, regulators, but also obviously companies as well, trying to figure out what to make of new regulation or new technologies, and really these dynamics around the race between regulators and technology seeming to play out here. The stablecoin NFT aspect of the MiCA regulations also seems particularly interesting, because there's very little in the global regulatory community on either of those technologies. So what do you think of what MiCA has done as a preliminary stage to regulating stablecoins and NFTs?
I think the biggest challenge, I mean, with stablecoins, that's comparatively simple, because in the end, you now have like an environment you can operate with, you have a clear set of rules, and then you're allowed to issue these stablecoins, right? And the major risks are addressed, right? But it is, in my personal opinion, and I'm not telling it's not my opinion if it's good or bad or was necessary or not, but it's rather strict, right? It's possible, but it's rather strict. When it comes to NFT, it was like for a long time, it was not sure if NFTs are in the scope or out of the scope, right, of MiCA regulation. And you can argue in both ways if it's good or bad. If you exclude it from MiCA, you don't know what regulators will do with it. If it like, okay, if it's not covered with MiCA, is it then a security, right, or not? Or if it's covered, okay, how do you actually address it? And NFTs, that's the same challenge. Again, I think that it's from a technological point of view rather simple, right? A non-fungible token is the same token. Like, let's use the example of Ethereum. The only difference in the smart contract is a UID, where you can have like an increasing number from 1 to 1,000, for example, to have a very simple example, and then you have an NFT. In Liechtenstein, for example, you have the NFT where you can say, okay, this token represents ownership to a physical object, for example, a Mona Lisa, right? If you have one token, is this a security? It's only the ownership proof for your physical object, right? Right. But what if you issue 1,000 tokens or 1 million tokens representing a 1/1,000,000th of ownership to that piece of art, right? Is that a security? What I'm saying is it really depends, right? It's not like, and that's what you see. It's a very specifically to the to this part. You have to look at the specific use case and the definition of where and how this was actually used, right? And NFTs is a very good example for me, because with NFTs, you can talk to 5 people, and 5 people have a completely different picture of an NFT. Some of them have this picture in mind with this digital arts of animals, right? Pretty simple on websites, and then they think, oh my gosh, I buy it today and keep it for a month and then I'm rich, right? This is the concept of some people. Others use it for, no, it's really digital art. It will revolutionize the way how art is distributed and how actually we create art. But on the other hand, also how we deal with royalties, right? And then you have NFTs are used for, as I said, representation of rights and ownerships, the Liechtenstein civil law part example. So this European approach, which we have now, is only focused on the supervisory law, right? This regulatory regime with licenses and things. But it's not about the civil law part for transfer of ownership. All of the member states, they have to figure that out as well, right? So there is, and I think that is another thing which is one approach. I don't know if it's the best one, but here you see an approach that MiCA is differentiating between some crypto assets, right, and have specific rules for specific crypto assets.
Right.
And there are other regulatory approaches where they don't have any of these classification approaches. And I think the big challenge with it is that the problem is, coming back to the NFT example, if you say we have a class of crypto assets which are NFTs, right? It really depends on the specific NFT, and most of them are actually hybrids, right? So some of them serve as a payment instrument, some of them serve as a container to represent rights, some of them are just purely digital art. The only thing you have is actually in the token itself, all of the information you need. And that's the big challenge with this classification approaches, that most of the things we see in reality are actually hybrids, right? It's not,
right.
It's very challenging to put them into the right basket, right? And people,
Exactly.
and then, for example, we had a lot of, like in Liechtenstein, we had a lot of these projects telling us, yeah, you know, we are a utility, or we are like Bitcoin, we're just like whatever, right? Or the problem is that regulators started with this differentiation in the beginning with securities, payments, instruments, and utilities, right? And everybody wanted to have, like, to fit into one of these baskets. And in the end, in reality, yeah, it was not helpful at all, because you really had to look at every token. And like, a token is issued once, and you can easily add like value or services to it, right? Or possibilities, right? So the nature of a token can also change during its life cycle. So
Right.
what I'm telling you, it's again, with NFTs, it's a starting point, but it's not the end of the story, right?
Yes. And, you know, I think that's a great place to leave it. And, you know, this point that it's incredibly difficult to figure out how to sort digital assets into different baskets, especially as the technologies themselves evolve and their uses evolve, is one that I think we're going to continue working on for quite a while. But
and there are a million questions. Yeah, there are a million questions related to that. What if I had a token on the proof of work Ethereum, and now what happened to the old one and the new one? Like, what's the nature of both of it? Actually, there are a million very interesting questions around all of that. And so we will have more and more things to discover and learn, I think, every day.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time and for answering these questions. Yeah, we're looking forward to highlighting many of these points in the upcoming digital asset report. So we'll look forward to that. Thank you.